Alright. C. Alex Clark on the Hammond organ, special Halloween edition. Human Design Catalyst session. Part 23. So today we're talking about encounter. Encounter. What is an encounter? Has anyone here had encounters to start with? Encounters? Encounters with any other entity, other intelligence, something outside of yourself. Mystical encounters, aliens, ghosts. Some people have ghost encounters like Bigfoots or big feet. What about demons? Yeah. Demons, demonic encounters.
I've spoken with the devil.
Anyone has spoken with the devil and had conversations with demons? Anyone have the sleep one? Where you, sleep paralysis, yeah. You have sleep paralysis, that's kind of an encounter. Of friends, yeah. So what's interesting is all of us are open to all different kinds of encounters. But we each are attuned to a particular type of encounter, and then we also have a second kind of encounter that will distract us from what we're really attuned to. And we're going to kind of deconstruct what an encounter is. And this is what Ra, the messenger of human design, would call a gray course. Because the gray courses, things are not black and white. This takes a little bit of poetic imagination. And it can be, usually I would not talk about the gray stuff too much because it put a lot of people off from human design. I try to keep it super practical, keep it to mechanics, but I decided to call this talk the mechanics of encounter, because we're going to actually try to get something practical from it, which can be hard when you're working with the gray material. Right? We're working with such a weird topic. So the first thing we need to know is just the context of a little bit of the cosmology that human design is founded in. So for those of you who watched Ron's Encounter with the Voice, there's a man, Alan Robert Krakauer, who kind of went a little nuts, left behind his family, moved to Ibiza around 1983, actually. And then he was, he lived wild in Ibiza to the point where he was like living in a chair in a tree, and there was a woman who was very obviously crazy, who everyone in town knew was crazy, who was like sitting on the tree, didn't see him for a while, and then at one point he looked up at him and he recalled the sense of relief that she had, that he was the crazy one. This is kind of like how far out he got. And after about 5 years of this, living kind of feral and doing LSD all the time, a lot of LSD. He was with John Miller, he was doing early experiments with ketamine. I mean, Ron did thousands and thousands of psychedelic trips. The way he got his name, incidentally, was that his name was Robert, middle name. His dad wanted to name him Alan after some family person. His mom wanted Robert. So he was Alan Robert. But he really liked the name Robert. He went by Robert. When he first moved to Ibiza, someone asked him his name. And when I say he moved to Ibiza, his family thought he was dead. So he wouldn't declare dead. He literally left and just fled the country to where he was declared dead. Because he was working in Toronto at that time as a music video creator. He worked with the young people. So really interesting guy. But anyway, he moves to Ibiza. Someone asks him his name, and he starts to say Robert, and he just stops after the first syllable. And that's how he got Rob. Later he got Uru Hu, if you watch his Encounter with the Voice, you'll see why. But in any case, he had this 7-day encounter that began with him coming home to his basically little hut that didn't have any electricity or anything. Welcome. And so the light was on, the light from the kerosene lamp, and he didn't have any kerosene. He didn't have any money, so he didn't have scavengers. And so he was like, why is this kerosene lamp on? He opens the door, it goes in, and it's floating. And at that moment, his dog runs past him, which is also a feral dog. Anyway, his dog, Barley Baker, runs past him and then collapses on the ground as if it was shot by a shotgun blast. And then Ra himself collapses to the ground, and all of the water in his body leaves his body immediately to a huge pool, and he feels like he's dying and has this near-death experience where he's in the most excruciating pain in his life, and he starts to hear a voice that sounds like a 140-year-old woman who chain smokes cigars. And he would later call her the mother in an initial voice. And his conclusion was ultimately that she was the design crystal bundle, which is essentially this consciousness of the earth. It's like the earth mother of God's consciousness. So he has this encounter for about 7 days. The way it starts is that he's hearing this voice that is asking him if he's even ready to work. He has work to do. And anytime he tries to ignore it and tell himself that he's not completely insane and tries to push the voice away, he feels this pain. And then as I need some organ here for he feels the pain. And yeah. And then also really low rumbling, like the suspense. Yeah. And so what ends up happening is he continues listening to it, and the thing is, human design was like one of the 7 or 8 days of this experience. Human design was a tiny fragment of his download. Now, this download also coincided really interestingly with an astronomical event, which was the supernova of a star, the largest supernova of a star that we experienced. Yeah, exactly. It was, so the name's not coming to me, but it was something 87, I forget what it was, or 88. There was this star that went supernova. I used to know all the details behind it. And, it closely correlated. I mean, it wasn't exact, but it's interesting because it's the first time in Western recorded history of a supernova like this happening. We've had some mythological tales of that, but for those who don't know, a supernova is when a star dies. And when it dies, it emits, these so many neutrinos. Because stars always emit neutrinos, but for 45 minutes during the supernova, or when the supernova of that star reached Earth, it is still studied to this day. Everyone on Earth was flooded with so many more neutrinos. So the interesting thing about that is that we're constantly living in a sea of neutrinos. This is not mystical stuff. This is just astronomy. Basic astronomy is that these neutrinos are constantly penetrating our body. But for a period of time, it's the only time in really Western world history that we were all penetrated and saturated by thousands of times more neutrinos than we're used to. And so what's interesting is a lot of people, when they first encounter human design, are kind of like, oh, there's a weird familiarity to it. And it's almost as if the information coincided in some way. But I'll kind of leave that aside. They said this would be a great course here. Okay, so this is getting into the grave. But be that as it may, however it was, whether it was the ravings of a lunatic or whether it was a true astronomical event that sort of brought this information on the neutrinos from the death of the star, however it is, Ra ended up having 7 or 8 days of this intense psychedelic mystical experience. And a very small amount of that was human design. The rest of it was the design of forms, the design of plants, the design of mammals, the design of reptiles and birds and fish, and the design of transauric forms like the penta, which we've studied in this class, and the wa, which are, pardon? Yeah, the dog the whole time, Barney Baker, was completely motionless and dead, basically, and came back to life. And it's really intense. For those who want to, it's really interesting. For those who want to look into this, just watch Ra's Encounter. But I'm kind of giving the context here because human design is based in this cosmology that emerged out of Encounter. It emerged out of Encounter with the sort of prime crystal bundle. And part of that encounter was the cosmology of what these crystals are. So it's really this whole cosmology around crystals of consciousness that cannot be measured in atomic matter. We have atomic matter. All the waterfalls and all the flesh and all the dirt and all the stuff and all the stars and fire and plasma and everything out there is atomic that we can measure. And yet it's 6% of what's out there. Maybe 10 or 15 at the most. There's different numbers. The rest of it's dark matter and dark energy. Right? And in that dark matter and dark energy is the immeasurable non-atomic universe, which nevertheless still exists. It doesn't exist in the Well, these crystals of consciousness exist in the non-atomic matter. And it's the neutrino that is the only thing that can transmit information between the non-atomic and the atomic. The neutrino interacts with both. It interacts with dark matter and dark energy, also interacts with atomic. So these crystals of consciousness, where do they come from? Well, our universe was formed in the Big Bang. And here, human design agrees with conventional astronomy. However, the Big Bang is also understood as the meeting, the collision of yin and yang crystals of dark matter. This collision, they shattered, and the crystals of consciousness have then been dispersed throughout this ever-expanding universe. Now, I won't go too much into it now because we're going to stick to encounter, but the cosmology of human design is so fascinating because the universe has a purpose. The universe for human design is an unborn, living entity. It is a fetus. It is a baby in the womb. And just as human babies grow different organs and different chakra centers, and human babies evolve, and certain organs are produced first and others evolve later. Well, for human design, the same thing is happening in the universe, and our solar system is the third eye of that universe, and we are the grand evolutionary experiment in self-reflected consciousness. Other parts of the universe are conscious, just like your big toe is conscious. You stutter, you get the pain. But the big toe is going like, do I feel pain or not? Am I existentially it doesn't have, the big toe is not doing the Sartrean, self-reflection about its pain. It's just feeling. And people always say, well, how do we know? Well, we know because we're self-reflected. That's our whole thing. We're like the thing that is aware. We live in a sea of consciousness, but we're conscious of that consciousness. Michael?
Is that why the tyranny of our experience as humans comes from the mind? So if different parts of the universe are growing different organs, does that mean there's a place where all the problems are coming from the spleen, and the spleen's trying to control everything or some shit?
That's I love this idea. I love that there's a part of the universe where where the root, everything's just pressures, and then certain things are pushing it to be don't pressure me, bud, but they're not aware of that because they don't have the mind to be aware of it. Yeah. Wonderful. Now we have Trevor Rogers. This is being recorded to be this is being recorded to be put on the Human Design Catalyst YouTube channel. The Human Design Deconditioning channel. Alright, so where does encounter fit into all this? Well, what happened was these crystals of consciousness, there was the prime personality crystal and the prime design crystal. And the personality crystal is the yang, the kind of spirit, right? And the design crystal is the yin. And the yin is the form principle. It is the principle of, the forms of the body. It's the matter. It's the material. And so when they collided, they shattered, they were distributed around the cosmos. And then over time, we've entered into this evolutionary experiment where what happens when a human is born, and again, there's information about this for all of the different forms. What happens when a human is born is that at a certain point, about 6 months into the development of the fetus, about 3 months before the human is born, emerges from the womb, the design crystal enters the body. And that's called your design date. And I celebrate my design date just like my birth date. In fact, that's our kind of true birth date because that's not when our mind entered into the body, but that's when the intelligence of our body itself emerged. So this actually puts to rest all the questions of when is the fetus conscious? Well, it's not conscious until birth, but it is unconscious around 3 months before birth. So this kind of puts to rest a lot of those pro-life, pro-choice debates and stuff there. But in any case, it's about 6 months after the egg is fertilized that the design crystal enters into it, and then it's at the moment of birth that the personality crystal enters. And the personality crystal doesn't actually enter; it hovers above the head, which is why Rahman's wear a hat and joke that he was keeping his personality crystal warm. He was also bald. But in any case, the design crystal sits where the magnetic monopole is in the G center, and it's kept in a state of tension with the magnetic monopole. It's almost like the most beautiful love story. All they want is to be together. The design crystal, which is this fragment of the original yin crystal that collided with the Big Bang. And all it wants is to be together with the magnetic monopole, which is basically this guiding navigational element that we have here in our body. And It wants to be together, but it can't. It's being kept apart by what is essentially the life force. And in the moment of death, they bond together. They're actually consummated. And then the design crystal leaves the body immediately and through the root, through the perineum, and it rejoins. Yes, good. And it rejoins the prime design crystal bundle, which is this bundle of design crystals that is in the Earth's mantle. And then for about 72 hours, up to 72 hours after death, the personality crystal hangs around and you have the Bardo experience. And this is why it's advised to be designed not to be an organ donor and not to disturb the body for 72 hours after death, because you're having the Bardo experience. Okay, so what happens if the body is disturbed? Well, if that happens, then the personality crystal basically stops hovering or stops experiencing that body, and or I guess and it kind of gets lost. It kind of just enters and just starts filling up, and it's no longer able. See, because if you don't disturb the body, the personality crystal is able to be picked up by one of the 16 primary personality crystal bundles that exist in the Earth's atmosphere. What's fascinating about this is that while there's only one yin bundle, there's only one Mother Earth. There's only one bundle of consciousness for the entire Earth, which is the consciousness of the form. There are actually 16 competing bundles, the prime bundles anyway, for the mind. And these 16 competing bundles have different names, they're identified by different godheads. You can even divide within them, and you can basically find all of the competing religions of the world represented. They're all fighting for your mind. It's this big battle for your mind. But, Mother Earth doesn't care about your mind. Mother Earth only cares about the body, the health of the body, which is why. So C had mentioned, asked if we talk about dreams. I don't think we're going to go into dreams as much, but you can have personality dreams, you can have design dreams. And your personality dream is a dream that's basically trying to convince you to trust your mind more. Like, don't follow your strategy and authority. Oh, you're a generator? Don't follow your You're emotional? Don't wait for emotional clarity. Just, just seducing you with promises for the mind. And the design dreams are those dreams that actually modify your biochemistry. So, for instance, a wet dream is a design dream. It's the form crystals saying basically we need to calibrate this body. This body is sexually depressed. We need to, have an orgasm. Pardon?
How do we determine design dreams?
How would we determine it's a design dream? Well, there's a whole science behind this, or mechanics of it, I guess I should say, which we'll have to go into. But there's particular gates that are related to it. So, like a flying dream is typically a personality dream, but like a wet dream would be a design dream. And there's a whole classification system. It relates them to the different gates of each chain. But an example of a really terrifying nightmare, these are design dreams. These are absolutely design dreams because the nightmare is causing a biochemical reaction in the body, like adrenaline, heart rate, stuff like that. And it's actually doing something to the body that maybe the body needed. So the mind is like, fuck this, I fucking hate this is terrible. And the body's like, yes, I was able to release all that built up. Cortisol.
Angels to demons in the same way, similarly different.
Good point.
It's a general.
Michael.
Or things like crying and changes in body temperature also indications of design dream.
Crying in your dream?
Waking up crying.
Probably.
Waking up with altered body temperature.
Probably. And the other interesting thing is that, just as a side note, personality and design dreams, we all have a hard time remembering our dreams, more or less. Some really stick with us. But the personality dreams, if you hear like a bell, a really high sound of birds chirping, will often trigger the memory of the dream. Whereas a design dream, if you have a strong smell or strong taste, it will often trigger the memory of the dream. So it just goes to show how different they are, how certain things appeal to the mind. So staying on track with Encounter, and I'm not going to go so long on this, but it's a little. See, yes. About dreams?
No, about death. So is that kind of why, like traumatic deaths tend to create this, floating personality?
That's exactly, because the body was disturbed after death or at the moment of death.
Right at the moment of death.
That's exactly right. So that's perfect. So that's exactly the track we're trying to get back on from dreams is to realize that, the moment of death, the design crystal leaves, it's okay. The design crystal is always going to return to the Earth's mantle to be with the other design crystals. The personality crystal, however, will either hang around and you have your Bardo experience, experience. And you have basically this amazing psychedelic experience of consciousness beyond death, the afterlife experience.
So what you choose to create based upon the dogma to into this experience.
It happens based on the time of death, the kind you'll have. The time of death determines one of 6 experiences. What's interesting is based on how long it takes, based on the death, how long it takes for the personality crystal to get scooped up, you'll have between 1 and 3 different Bardo experiences. So like the one where you see all your ancestors is like one of them, for instance. Or the one where, time feels eternal is like a different one. Or like there's like different ones. And not everybody, in one life, most of it actually has 3 out of the 6 possible afterlife experiences. But there's a whole aspect of that.
Would you postulate that there are no truth-drawing interpretations?
I would say the debate about truth is more of a.
As far as this personal experience with talking about.
Oh, you've got it. Oh, near death.
Yeah, I was there for 12 minutes and I stayed at home from.
Yeah, this actually ties in perfectly. Remember we talked about that in the car one night. This ties in perfectly with. No. This ties in perfectly with how we transpose these experiences beyond the ken of our normal understanding into something we can understand. And it actually ties into the encounter, because what we're going to find is that the difference between an angel and a demon and a ghost and a god and an entity and an alien is the difference between you and your filtering mechanism, because it's all the same.
Right.
body.
So
That's being stepped up or stepped down or transposed.
Can of Pringles instead of grabbing
This is the individual gunslinger tale. This is the 8-1 here, ladies and gentlemen. Trevor, beautiful. The 8-1 in action. For those who don't know, the 8-1 is a channel of verbal creativity, and it's all about expressing these. It's incredible.
I'm trying to play ping pong.
Yeah, no, I love it. Okay, so what happens after death then is, you have this Bardo experience, then the body can be disturbed. What happens in that case is that one of the 16 prime crystal bundles is unable to reclaim its own, so to speak, because you came from one of them, your mind did. And by the way, these crystals are eternal for all intents and purposes. They go all the way back to the Big Bang, which is about as close to eternity as we can measure in our. If people who say like, you're an old soul or a young soul, these things might have some meaning in a certain way, but maybe you had a lot of incarnations as a human or something. But the crystal the design crystal in a dog or the design crystal in an ant is the same as the design crystal in a human. These are just eternal crystals that are reused again and again. But our personality crystal does actually keep a record of all of its past lives. But the thing is, you only get you only get future lives if it's scooped back up. So in the old days, there were actually a lot less encounters and a lot more reincarnation, because a lot of people just died and just left in their natural state on death. A lot of traditions didn't disturb the bodies. And then, in more recent human history, we have so much disturbing of the bodies, so many things happening, cremations and so on. These are people who will never reincarnate. Not that you have any necessary consciousness of reincarnation, so it's kind of a moot point. But in the rave cosmology, it's still better to reincarnate, because all of the personality crystals that do reincarnate are basically collecting information for an ultimate purpose, which is later in our evolution. And so it kind of goes against the evolutionary purpose, for what it's worth. Not that it really affects you.
Going from a 5 cent.
Yeah, it's the same personality crystal that was in 5 cent. Absolutely. But then if you die and are immediately cremated or an organ donor or something, that's your last incarnation. It doesn't affect you, you're dead at that point. Although it does affect you insofar as you don't get your Bardo experience. So I was talking to some organ donors the other day, and they were saying how selfish is he, or I was kind of joking about, I'm being selfish because I want to get my afterlife experience. I want to be interrupted by some, all that shit. Sorry, anyway, it's a little bit morbid, but hey, it's Halloween. So, so personality crystals. So personality crystals, in any case, if you are buzzsawed into pieces and stuff after your death, then what happens to the personality crystal? It just floats around. But it doesn't stay floating around on its own. It eventually gets kind of magnetically drawn into what we call rogue crystal bundles. These rogue crystal bundles are not quite as big as the godheads of the prime 16 crystal bundles, which have billions upon trillions of personality crystals in them or something. Maybe not, actually not that. Think about it, but how many people have been alive with someone? But they have a lot. And these might not have as many. We're talking the tens of thousands, even hundreds. But these are the entities. These are the entities where, if you ever have somebody who's a psychic medium and they're like, oh yeah, there's like a spirit here. Well, they're usually faking unless they're like, there's 80 fucking spirits here. Because they're this clogged. It's completely clogged. Everywhere we go, we're clogged with spirits. I mean, they're just everywhere.
Radio waves. But she'll say she can tune into.
Exactly. They're all around. There's so many. We are in a sea of these rogue crystal models, more than ever before. And usually they don't really disturb us or affect us. But
observe them.
Okay, but this is what's interesting is that they are drawn to color transference. And so they will actually latch on to the people who have strong color transference. And so in our class on color, we all looked at our motivations. And so I was asking our motivations. Is it okay if I use people's name? This is going to be on video, but nobody really knows who you are. This is first names. Is that okay? Objections? Okay. Sen, do you know your color motivation?
Oh, Aaron doesn't know.
Oh, yeah. No, you just use your name in the video. just say A. Just say A. I mean, the video can't see you. I just mean, I just mean it's going to be on YouTube for all of eternity, until Brahma's long night and we're all destroyed. Anyway, that's the election. Okay. Do you have one of yours?
I don't.
Okay, I know you were there for the motivation one, but I don't know. Okay. Well, in any case, so Danny's motivation is need. This is color 2. It's going to go over the motivations. This is a refresher. Mike's desire, as is Daniel. Mary Francis' hope. Will is motivated by guilt, which always sounds bad, but it's not. It's not, because guilt actually means knowing how to fix things. But see, all of these, and I was keeping going on 7 is hope, and A is innocence. And so, but the thing is, and C is here. I have you right here. Okay. So, but the thing is, none of us are actually accessing. Oh, and then Trevor is innocence, of course. So none of us are actually accessing our cognitive gifts that we have. Well, very few of us. Trevor's accessing the fuck out of his cognitive gifts. I'm going to witness it.
It's weird.
But but it only happens when you're not transferred. So I'm not going to ask you.
I love talking about
If it's okay, if it's okay to use an example. So for Trevor, his correct motivation is innocence. Innocence has no motivation. It's the antithesis of motivation. It's moving through life in a way with no expectations, with no goals, with no plans, with no ambitions. But it's because all those things get in the way of truly observing. So I don't ask Trevor, what are your plans? Where are you going to see yourself in 5 years?
Oh,
what are you working on? I ask Trevor, what have you been observing lately? Yeah. And he tells me, and it's incredible, and it's pure, and it's not adulterated.
My girlfriend asked me, do you see this temporary relationship? And I was like, I didn't want to say, everything's temporary. Because it is. But
just a reminder.
But some people's truth is found over time. Some people's truth is found in the now. But it's the same thing if you think about it, because if I'm in a committed relationship and I'm with you now, there's not going to be a future without a now. So of course I consider this this isn't temporary. If you look at it like that, because I'm here now. She bought that.
and because the more you don't allow yourself to be tempted with the mental temptation to have the ambition and desire and so on, the more you're able to truly see.
Desire is my one.
It's the opposite. It's the opposite. So for me, I'm desire, and Mike is desire, Daniel's desire. Our opposite is innocence, and so we get pulled into, I don't really need to be involved. The worst people for us are the ones that say, don't worry about it, don't bother, it's okay, everything's fine, don't get involved, it's not your problem. Those people are poison for us, they're toxic poison. Because we're the ones who need to fight against the inertia of innocence that says smoke pot and hang out and whatever, see what happens. To fight against that inertia, to stay locked into our desire. But the worst people for Trevor are the ones that say, hey man, get it together, you need your 5-year plan down, you need your, and they're pushing you into and asking you, what do you really want?
My uncle said, hey, what are you going to do when you're 50 or 60 and you don't have a job? So go to any bar in the world and make a friend.
Yes.
You know, I mean, honestly, like, not to like be like that person, but
Yeah.
how am I gonna worry about time that hasn't happened yet? And like, I've had the gift of having my life taken out from under me without anyone.
Yeah.
You know, and so that makes more sense to me even in that way, where it's like I'm not sitting under my pillow and you know I'm gonna smoke all my weed. And
Man saving money is like dog saving bone. That's a Von Paul quote. So, or dog hiding bone. Yeah. Okay. So the reason I bring this up about motivation is because when you're living according to your true motivation, you actually don't typically have encounters. If you do, it'll be a correct encounter for you. But you don't really actually have encounters. It's like those encounters are kind of distractions. The encounter with an angel, the encounter with a demon, the encounter with a ghost, none of that really affects you because you're living as yourself and you're accessing your cognition. So when I'm actually locked into something, locked into my desire, I'm not going to have an encounter. But if I just fuck off and get high and play video games and see what happens and we're innocent, whatever.
What if that's your desire?
What's that? Well, if it's a desire, it's fine. If you're locked into it. See, desire is all about being locked into something. If I say I'm going to be a competitive gamer, the best game that ever existed, I'm going to take this to the end, then that's perfect. But if I'm just like, you know, it's really obvious. You can see the obvious for the desire and innocence when something happens. You're going along in your life, and something happens, and someone gets in trouble. And us desire people, if it's related to us or if it's correct for us, we are supposed to basically jump in there and get it all on track again and realign it. And we're like motivational speakers. But there's part of us that goes, why bother? Don't get involved. Stay out of it. It's not your business. And similarly, for the innocent people out there, there's a part of them that's saying, just get what you want, make it happen, do it, follow your desire, follow your ambition. Your dreams will come true if you stay locked into it. And it's not true. This is not their dream cognition. They need to be open to anything that can happen.
right, because if you say this is what I want, then you just like took all like chance.
Yeah, and so for you, that's poison. For me, that's actually so important. You know, as desire people, we need to eliminate all that.
But if you have a compass on like not necessarily where you want to be or who you want to be, but how you want to be, right? How I want to be. That will take care of all the things that you want. Because if you know how you want to be, then the things that into that way, along the path.
And for an innocent person, then that and everything does fall into place. For a desire person, that's kind of like, so that's what I'm saying is that, so, but anyway, in staying with my desire, we need to stay with encounter, because again, I'm going to remain locked into this, I'm not going to give up on it. And so basically what I'm going to say is that the more you're drawn away, the more you're transferred from your true motivation, the more you're open to encounter. And you're actually open to a very particular kind of encounter. All of us can experience all of the different types of encounter. But we have one that we tend to be most fascinated by, most drawn to. So what's interesting is, let's just start with the beginning. I'll start with someone who's correctly motivated by fear. Like C. Well, the fear people, when they're correctly motivated, everything is about survival. Everything is about how am I going to make it work? How am I going to do it? You know, a good question to ask C is, well, how are you going to do that? You know, because that's what strikes fear to your heart. It's a good fear. It's a healthy fear that makes you worry you don't know how to do it. And that's a fear that leads to intelligence. But if C is being transferred into need, well, need is the opposite of fear. This is trying to meet everybody's needs all the time. You know, if I ask C, like, hey, I really need this from you, or, you know, what do you think Santa Fe needs? That's not a question for C to answer. It's how are you going to make it work, right? Not, you know, someone who truly is need, like Danny, is like, well, does the world actually need another one of those? That's a great question to ask you, because you'd be like, yes, it's exactly what they need. Or, no, the world doesn't need that. People don't need that. I'm making something that doesn't have any value, right? And that'll align you to what you should be making and what you should be doing as far as those needs. Okay, so using C as the example, starting with fear. Fear is actually related to angels. That sounds weird. But the kind of encounter you would have with an angel is one that appeases your fear. It relates to fear because it's basically, it's the fear that wants the angel to come in and save the day. And the transfer of fear to need is to God's. And so, I know it's going to be very abstract, so it would be great, So for C, if C became really, really, really unbalanced and really deep into the transfer of needs, so far into that transference that you had no.
Been there, baby.
Okay, you're just like living to meet other people's needs.
Yeah.
And every waking moment, you're thinking about other people's needs. Pretty soon, you would start to live your life only by signs, because the gods give you signs. And you would be looking for signs for everything. And you wouldn't be making decisions according to your actual bodily intelligence. You would basically be making decisions in an almost schizophrenic way. It's not to knock schizophrenics. There's some brilliant schizophrenics out there, and there's some who are actually living their design. But I'm saying in this sort of negative version of schizophrenia, where you wouldn't make any decisions, you would be almost like an automaton, a robot, who's only living according to when the sign tells you, well, I can't go in there because the 11, it's like the neurotics, it's, you know what I mean, like, that's my unlucky number. I'm not going to go in there. Right, so you know what I mean. So that's the transference to gods.
Yeah.
Now, Danny is the exact opposite. For Danny, when she's living in her fear, she's going to be full of unfounded fears. Fears about things that might never happen. At that point, if she became truly unbalanced, and I obviously don't see it this way, and I don't know I'm just saying this would be purely hypothetical, but it would be that you would then be believing in angels and looking at angels for everything. And you sometimes met these people. These people who say, well, my angel protects me, my angel is there for me. They're so much in deep in belief in angels because they're living a life so much negative fear. Again, for C, fear is the healthiest thing in the world. It's the fear that leads to intelligence. For Danny, fear is a poisonous thing that corrupts and prevents you from accessing your cognitive potential as somebody who can accurately identify what people need. Right? That's the true cognitive gift. So again, the transference, and then when it gets to a very strong place, an extreme place, you actually have full-on, delusions and or hallucinations. And again, I'm not judging these because all of human design came from this. Literally, the story of human design is the story of madness. It's the story of what would have been pathologized by Western medicine as madness. It might have been appreciated by certain indigenous cultures as a shamanic experience. Right? So again, I'm not trying to say that these experiences are always bad. I'm saying that when you're in your transference away from your true motivation, from what aligns you to the true core of yourself, that's when you have these negative encounters. So I'll give another example really quick. Yes, please. So you can transfer to any of the other five, actually. This is just the main one.
So you're most likely.
Yes, but you can experience all of them. It's absolutely true. And for people that are color 4 lead, they're actually going to, because the fourth color is inherently unstable, it's going to actually move between them all. I want to wrap it up because I don't want to bore people. There's a few more examples just so you can see what I'm talking about.
Let's go through all 6.
Yeah, we're through. Okay, so that's great. So we did angels. So angels are essentially, people who should be motivated by need, but are so deep in their fear that they're afraid of everything. They're really unhealthy. They're obsessed, right? They have an obsession with their fear. Those people are going to start to be open to experiences with angels. So we get to the next one. We get to demons. Demons are the second color. And what's interesting about demons are related to hope. So what? Okay, but again. So Mary Frances here is motivated by hope. You don't have any problem with demons. Demons are your friend.
We talked about this. The message is like solid demon.
Because, I've seen demons.
Right, we can all experience all of them.
Right, and it's the more you see it, then you're like, oh, cool, I saw it, and then it fills you.
And this is also because you're aligned to your innocence, which is the observer of everything, right? So it's really good because you're able to see it and be seen and then experience this.
And you have power.
And it's also, the other thing about the sixth color, which I don't want to go into too much, but it's very non-binary. So a lot of your points are well, when you see it, it's also seeing you. When you're touching it, it's touching you. This is part of your gift, is your ability to see that quantum entanglement that goes beyond the binary. And it's beautiful.
This is a makeup story. When they saw me, I just thought with the string that we had between each other, we're all made of the same stuff, right? So I thought. And they're like, hey! Because it was that was
Get it! Finally, some motherfucker gonna get it.
But again, the sixth line is to observe or to be observed, purely.
Mm-hmm.
And
you're also
my
a sixth
frustration
color.
with all that because it's like, say something.
Well, so what's interesting is, so when we go into these transferences, and we can all experience all of them, but there's only one that's particularly problematic. You know, for me as a desire being, if I have a transference to a moment of fear and I'm seeing an angel or something, that's not really going to distract me as much as innocence does. And I have a personal story I can tell about that momentarily. But let's just go through them. So what's interesting is to kind of deconstruct. So the 6 are angels, demons, ghosts, gods, entities, and aliens. And we can deconstruct the context behind these. So angels we already kind of deconstructed to fear. You can actually go very deep with this because the most primal tone, the most primal, which is an aspect of human design that relates to the sensory experience, is smell. So you can even go as far as to say you actually don't see angels, you smell them. People who have experiences with angels, it's like a smell thing. And someone like C is actually the true friend of angels. It's all the people like Danny that have the potential to feel like they need to be looking for angels or having angels protect them, but they're not actually angel people, if you know what I mean. Danny, you're a godly person, you can say. It's your 4th color, so okay, so to go into demons next. Demons get a bad rap. Now, demons are related to hope. So as I started to say, Mary Frances, whose true motivation is hope, actually will not typically have a relationship to demons. I mean, other than that is your true camaraderie. Like, your true camaraderie is with the demons, but they're not a problem. Yeah, no, you'll see what I mean by this momentarily. The big problem for you is actually entities. And I can explain what entities mean momentarily. But the big problem for you, would be an encounter, not with a demon. You encounter a demon, it's like no big deal, because you don't...
Hey, what's up?
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, man.
Because the demonic, okay, but then Will, whose 5th color motivation, would actually potentially have the problem with demons. So I'll explain how that works. So for Will, the most important question I could ask you, Will, is how are you going to fix that? And the worst thing I could say is what do you think will happen? Because when I say what do you think will happen, it will align your consciousness to hope. Well, I hope this happens. Well, I hope that doesn't. I hope I can get, a new guitar. I hope that person, can improve their life and learn to not be such stealing shitbags. Or it can fill with the hope for what will happen in the future. And for you, as a 5th color motivation, that hope, if taken to the extreme, will lead to the encounter. It's basically like the demon on your back, like someone who's like, well, I'm sure hoping that my partner will stop drinking so much. Well, your partner hits you. Well, yeah, but I hope he gets his stuff together, or whatever. You can see how the demon, or even someone who has a drinking problem, as an example.
Yeah, all the demons are up on.
It's like the demons on the shoulder. It's like the monkey on the shoulder. It's all over the back, or whatever it is.
My professor said if you can't handle your liquor and you don't remember your dreams, you shouldn't be a doctor.
Well, there you go. But in any case, so demons are related to hope, which seems like a really weird one, but it's actually the hope demon. It's hoping things will change, and it's pulling you away from your true cognitive gift. Will has an incredible cognitive gift, which is to know immediately exactly what to do to fix something or change that situation. To know exactly what, it's kind of like that AA thing about, or the words prayer thing, I don't know what it is, it's some kind of, give me the power to know what I can and can't
That's
change.
serenity.
Okay, I don't know what it is. That's the thing. I'm a one principle person. I'm not a personality person. I don't know. But it's to know what I can and can't change. So that's what guilt is all about. It's taking personal responsibility and saying, this is my responsibility and that isn't. This I can change and that I can't. This is in my control, that's out of my control. And I'm not going to hope that things will take care of themselves. Now, for Mary Frances, it's the exact opposite. For Mary Frances, the problem is going to be that you're constantly meddling, trying to fix stuff, making it worse by saying, I need to do this. I'm going to fix it. I got to take action immediately. I'm going to go there. I'm going to tell them that they need to do blah, blah, blah. No. Instead, Mary Frances has an incredible cognitive gift, which is the gift to know what will and won't change. Mary Frances could open a natural wine bar on the edge of town, and everyone's like, "You're crazy. There's no demand for it here." And how can you think? And you're like, well, it's growing. It's like knowing trends. It's like hoping for the right things. Like aligning yourself to the hope that things are going to change in the way that your intuition tells you they will. Okay, and then these are the last pair. And this has been kind of a long talk, so I'm going to kind of wrap it up. No, but then that's serenity. But no, that's not for you. That's the guilt people. For you, it's like anything is possible. It's like no. It's the exact opposite. That was really See, that's what's funny. that prayer is bullshit. And then Mary Frances is like, I'm only going to fix the stuff that I can fix. I'm like, no, don't fix anything ever. Like, don't even try to fix it. You're not a fixer. Just like sit by the river and like think about what you think's going to change or not. Okay, because you can see hope has a connection to innocence. They're very similar. The last ones are desire and innocence. Desire is ghosts and innocence is aliens. Now what's the difference in this? So someone like Trevor or A who have innocence, if they're in their transference, they're going to be full of regret. These are the ghosts of regret that haunt you. And again, I'm using these metaphorically, but these become literal. If you go that deep into your transference, you actually do start to have these ghost encounters. You actually do have paranormal experience.
If I was laying in a field meditating and regretting things, that would be a coincidence. That's what happened.
Well, the more you regret, the more you're in your transference, and also the more you're haunted by the ghost, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing about us desire people, we have the ability to access our true cognitive gift of understanding that the sequence of our lives is an unbroken chain of events, and to even change a single link in that chain would irrevocably change everything. So even all the mistakes we make, we can come to peace with. And that's a great power that the desire people have, and that's why we can do what I'm doing right now, which is orating and kind of doing the preaching thing. Because us desire people are real preachers. We're preachers, we're leaders, we're meant to kind of get up there. And it's so funny because most of the leaders we have in this world are innocent people. They're innocent ones who are in their deep transference. And they're haunted by the ghosts. Now for us, what we get haunted by, the desire people, me, Mike, and Daniel, are aliens. It's not like haunted, it's more like curious or fascinated and wondering. We start to get enthralled and hypnotized into this transference of the weird and the spooky and the otherworldly and the alien. And so you can see how the desire people, that's all a distraction. Like, it's almost like this morbid curiosity that doesn't really have, we're not locked into anything. Our problem is we're not locked in. Like, a desire person needs to be locked in. And we need to be locked into our goal. And like every waking moment, like tunnel vision on our goal. And instead, we're kind of like, I'm just exploring the mysteries of the cosmos. And I'm going to like create something that's so otherworldly and different. It's the alien. And I'm going to close on a story that I have from a dream that I had. And it was so fascinating. So I was getting really into human design, getting very deep into it. When you start really into human design, you actually have this almost battle internally between your mind and your body, where your body is going, whatever it's doing. In my case, it's a generator, so it's starting to kind of wake up and make these sounds that I start to notice. And someone's like, hey, do you want to come over and have lunch? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then my body's like, and I'm starting to realize, wow, my mind has been calling the shots. My mind is like, say yes to this person because you'll hurt their feelings if you don't. And my body's like, and so I start to go through this, and then I have this really intense dream. And it was right when I was in the deepest of it, and it was a personality dream. Because the personality dreams are effectively trying to get you to stop doing human design. I'm not even kidding. It's like your own mind is like giving you dreams to try to convince you it's all bullshit. I'm not even joking about this one.
That's all the light realm.
That's the light realm, exactly. Promises of beauty. So what ends up happening in this dream is, I have this dream, and the dream is that I'm given access to this incredible tome, this tome of like amazing information. And it's like I'm going through these books, like the book of secrets, and I'm being given this book of secrets. I'm looking through it, and I'm finding all the secrets. And I remember I wrote down what the word was, but I even find this special like sacred word. And it's over these different characters, and I'm seeing, one of the characters, for instance, is, they're each in polarities. And I see this polarity of like Star Wars, like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. Then I get to X-Files, and it's Mulder and Scully. And this is mine. This is my true polarity. I'm looking at them and reading about them. I see like their real names, and I see the special name over it. And it's this very sacred, incredible thing. And I start to realize that, wow, the actual truth is this like otherworldly, like alien intelligence, and it feels so alien weird. Then immediately after that, I have this, in the same dream, basically, someone sent me something, and they go, hey, so did you know that Ma Uhu was like a gym personal fitness trainer? And they give me, and his real name was actually, they give me this other person's name, it's like some Tony Robbins, like shill dude, who's like a total bullshit artist, con artist, and he's doing like personal fitness stuff, he's like throwing in the same shit. And it's basically like, yeah, so like he basically, like he stole it all from this like personal fitness guy. None of it's actually original, and it was all just like made as a joke, and it's all just basically stupid stuff that only gullible people believe. So I simultaneously got like the real true holy book that was like X-Files and alien shit, and I like felt like I was like on an alien ship. It felt like I was having like an alien encounter with this like vast alien intelligence. And then they're like, oh, by the way, all that human design stuff is just some like gullible shit. So I actually woke up, and it was weird, for the next couple of days, it actually worked, and I started to really seriously second guess human design. It wasn't until I made the connection, and again, stayed locked into my desire, that I was able to return to human design today. So
What desire did you say?
the desire to continue pursuing human design. Well, you know, to live more truly like myself, to the desire to like transform my life by staying locked. It's really, really hard to stay locked into it. I mean, it's like your mom's sick in the hospital, like, do you want to come visit me? And you're like, like, you really don't, you know, and then what do, right? You know, we're so conditioned. We're so conditioned by everyone to care of our
sick mothers. It's bullshit.
That's what I'm saying, though. If for you it's correct, then she'll say, you want to visit? You'll go, I'll be there in 5. But if it's not correct, you'll be like, of course I want to visit you, Mom. You know, and it's all about what's correct for you, and only your body knows what's correct for you. You have a question, Tyler?
For everybody, but shared human design with several people about everything from like gangsters crying and like thanks homie, you know, and then you know, people's relationships improving, or they figure out how to communicate with somebody right, and it's really, you know, rewarding for them. And then also there's the other side of it where it's like what's the common denominator with like the skeptic?
That they're further away from the original collision of design crystal bundles. When the crystals collided, there's a core, mutative core of those crystals that continue to disperse. And at any given point in time, it's around 4% to 4% of humanity that's actually mutating. That's close to the original crystals, right? And the ones that are further away, it's like the telephone. Like the people strapping explosives to their vest and exploding themselves to see the 70 virgins, they're like 30 or 40 or 50 crystals removed from the people, who are, I don't want to say like us, but the people that are close to the mutative core, I'll put it that way. And so if you're close to that mutative core, you're kind of getting the direct transmission. And other people are getting like a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox of a Xerox passed along this game of telephone. And again, we can't all mutate at the same time. And in any moment in time, very few people can mutate. I mean, it's a constant percentage. So right now, it's probably 10 million people out of 7 billion that are mutating. Right? And that's actually a lot. Especially with the internet, because we all tend to find each other. All right, any other questions? Wrap it up. Okay. Thank you all for listening. Thank you. All right. Thank you,
Oh, you turned it off.
Oh, okay. Okay. It's okay. Okay, it's okay. Okay.
I got you at Mark's house.
Jonah, did you see that was an alcohol there?
No, I
That
didn't.
you just held up?
Oh! Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
The star that this corresponds to is perfectly on Jonah's just thinking. Hi, Grace. Decaffeinated. Is the star? Yeah. It's actually technically right there. It's the third eye.
No, just because these are multiple cars at once.
Let's start confirms it's still
There you
there.
go. Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah, I realized that I left my bags at the bottom of the stairs. Yeah, but this particular. I'm just saying, the particular subject to that is very important because I was looking for